This is freeze-dried candy, and it's unlike anything you've ever tried before, which may or may not be a good thing. About a year ago, the internet went crazy trying freeze-dried candy, and as a result, a lot of Etsy shops popped up selling different freeze-dried sweets. In fact, it opened up a whole wave of Etsy shops offering freeze-dried foods, and some of what they are selling can only be described as monstrous. Seriously, some of these products have zero business existing. We were interested in seeing what all the hype is about, so we purchased 10 different candies from a shop on Etsy. In this video, we'll discuss the pros and cons of freeze-dried candy to help you decide whether you should spend your money on it, because it ain't cheap. Starting with the worst, the Milk Duds. First of all, they look horrific. They look like a cross between a wasp's nest and flavored pork rinds. They were unrecognizable from the original candy, completely different looking. The dried Milk Duds expanded about 5 times in size and became honeycomb-like in texture, which was the nicest part about them. The problem is that they started to absorb moisture in the air the second we opened the bag, so they were really difficult to get out of the package because these air sponges were sticking to it. While the freeze-dried Milk Duds had a light, airy texture, they tasted less like chocolate and caramel and more like chemicals. It's all in the name, folks. These were a dud. Freeze-dried Starburst look like after-dinner mints, but they taste like fruity, brittle clay that wasn't baked properly. I had high hopes for them because I love the juicy flavor burst and the nice chew that they bring. But like the Milk Duds, the Starburst tasted like concentrated chemicals and they were not very enjoyable to eat.
Somehow it made these worse.
Really?
I don't know what that is, but it's awful.
Surprisingly, we don't have much to say about candy corn. Somehow the freeze-drying process made these hated sweets taste better. We couldn't figure out why, especially given that the flavors of the other candies intensified. However, the freeze-dried candy corn were about as hard as corn nuts. It's a candy you'll want to eat slowly, or, just don't eat it at all. It's really not that memorable. On to the Tootsie Rolls. I can't tell if the vendor cut these bad boys in half or if they shrunk during the freeze-drying process. Out of all of the 10 candies we reviewed, the Tootsie Rolls were the hardest. And the taste was this slight mixture between fruit and plastic, but ultimately it was fruitier than it was plasticky. They weren't that bad, but they were legitimately a danger to eat. If you were to mindlessly pop one of these Tootsie Rolls in your mouth and just start chomping, you could actually break a tooth. They were that hard.
That's somehow the hardest candy of all of them.
Trying the Airheads was where it started to get really interesting. They looked like kids' plastic toys. I wasn't really sure what to expect after having just eaten the equivalent of rocks and wasp rinds. But the texture of the Airheads was light. It was much like packed granulated sugar that broke apart under the pressure of your teeth. The flavor of the candies was very intense. The group kept talking about how potent and how strong these Airheads were. It was a pretty interesting experience to try them out, so we'd recommend them. Mambas look like the milkier versions of the Starburst after dinner clay, but they were delicious. Like with the Airheads, the Mambas have a sugar cube-like texture. However, the sugar of the Airheads was granulated, while the Mambas were smoother. I think Mamba Fruit Chews are an underappreciated candy, and they deserve all the thumbs up. If you're looking for a candy with a malt ball texture, get freeze-dried Bitto Honey. The candy melts in your mouth with a strong honey flavor. A word of warning, if you try to chew these, they're gonna get stuck in your teeth just like a regular Bitto Honey will, so it's better to just let them melt on your tongue. But overall, these were an A+ candy.
Oh, it's hard. Nope, I can't. Nice.
Freeze-dried Skittles have an airy but still crispy center that is very honeycomb-like. The center is firmer than the center of the Milk Duds, so the Skittles don't disintegrate the second you breathe on them, though they will absorb the moisture if you leave them out and they will become more like regular Skittles. The candied shell is similar to that of a sweet eggshell, and it adds a crunchy layer that enhances the overall texture. Freeze-dried Skittles are a treat. We're ranking both the original and wild berry versions together because they have the same texture, but the original Skittles have a much better flavor profile. The Chewy Sweetarts are magical. Their texture is exactly the same as the Skittles, but I think they stand out as a clear winner because they have more of a candied shell to crunch through. Plus, the Sweetarts have clean fruit flavors and an extra added tart flavor that just pops in your mouth. If you're gonna try any freeze-dried candies, try the Chewy Sweetarts. So let's talk about the pros and cons of eating freeze-dried candy. There's something really fun about gathering with friends and family and trying a novelty treat you've never had before. I found some really fun finds by reaching out of my comfort zone and trying new products. But that's about where the pros end. While there were a couple of winners here, most of these candies were not worth it at all. First, they cost a lot of money. Seriously, all of these candies cost us $30 for just a handful of candies in each container. I know Mama has to make her coins somehow, but it felt like a total ripoff. Plus, if you don't like a candy in its original form, you're likely to despise it in its freeze-dried form. That's because the freeze-dried process concentrates all of the flavors. So if you're eating a strawberry candy, you'll get a strawberry explosion in your mouth. However, the chemical flavors are also heightened in the process, making some of the candy just taste off. Combine that with an almost plasticky texture for some of the candies, and it sometimes feels like you're not eating real food. Seriously, sometimes I was holding these very colorful, hard, shiny pieces of candy that seemed kind of unnatural, and my brain was tricked into thinking that I was eating a Lego or something. Plus, texture plays a huge part in what we eat, but freeze-dried candy all falls on the same short spectrum of either airy honeycomb or various levels of hard. Eating sweet foods with the same-ish texture loses its novelty very fast, especially when you can't even pay your rent because you bought these candies. So would we snub it or grub it? Overall, we'd snub freeze-dried candy. It tastes fake, the textures are weird, and it's not worth the money. Of course, you're free to go get your grub on, but make sure you have a good dentist first.